Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Monday Night Must-See TV with the Hudson Valley Squares. We've got a very special guest celebrity joining us today, founder of Metal Blade Records. We haven't seen him here on the channel in a little bit, Mr. Brian Slagel. Brian, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Woo!
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So today, our topic is, and this topic was kind of labeled by Mr. Chris Allo a while ago in a conversation that he and I and a couple of people had about those really special concerts that have happened in rock and roll history that you may have missed for whatever reason. Maybe you weren't old enough, or maybe it was took place in a different country, or maybe you got married that day and couldn't go to the show, or maybe you had the flu, or maybe whatever, maybe, right? So we want to take those time machines back to those shows, those tours, that festival date, whatever it might be. And everybody's going to kind of give 3 or more choices of those specific shows that they would love to be able to hop in that time machine and go back. And since he's our special guest today, I'm going to have Mr. Slagel kick us off with his first choice.
So I thought this was going to be easy, and it was very not easy. It was really difficult to limit it to 3. So I figured what I would do is, by the way, I have 2 honorable mentions I'll do at the end really quickly. But what I decided to do was take 3 concerts that I was too young to go to as a kid, and there's another circumstance that also caused me not to go. And these are concerts I actually could have gone to. And I'm going to do it in chronological order. So I'm going to begin with Alice Cooper at the LA Forum in 1975. That was the Welcome to My Nightmare tour. And at that point, I had not seen a concert yet. And I begged and pleaded with my mom to allow me to go and find somebody to take me. And yeah, that didn't work. Alice Cooper in 1975 was not a wholesome sort of dude at that point. So I got shot down, but I always wanted to go to that concert. However, it did end up on a bootleg, which I have, which is kind of cool to hear what I missed. And I did see Alice Cooper on my second ever concert I went to in 1977, strangely enough in Las Vegas, Nevada. We happened to be vacationing there. And again, I begged my mom to let me go. It was in the same hotel we were staying at. So I got to see him at the Aladdin Theater in Las Vegas, which is also where they recorded the Alice Cooper show live on. So there you go.
Wow.
So, Brian, I don't know if you noticed, but our center square is an enormous Alice Cooper fan. And as soon as you started talking, her eyes like lit up. It's like, yes.
Yeah, I have that LA Forum album. I have that bootleg on vinyl. It's like such a great concert because they never put out like an official like pressing of that. So yeah, I totally know what show you're talking about.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, it was great. Thought that I missed it though.
Yeah, me too.
All right, Lynn, you're up.
Okay, so a concert that I wished I was born and old enough to be able to go see for me is, I love John Bonham and I love Led Zeppelin. So for me, it was Led Zeppelin at the Whiskey A Go-Go. I love the Sunset Strip. It's one of my favorite places to be every time I go to California. And they played there January 5th, 1969. So can you imagine seeing them, 500 people, get to see, I don't know what kit John Bonham used that day. Was it the Vista Light? Was it the Green Sparkle? I don't know. But either way, seeing him, seeing Jimmy Page would have been fan-freaking-tastic. It's the funny thing is it was billed as Led Zeppelin featuring Jimmy Page, formerly of the Yardbirds. And better yet, I think I want to take Sydney with me back in my time machine because Alice Cooper opened.
Oh,
and I think that would have been a great 2-for-1 concert. That would have been like on the Sunset Strip, seeing these guys, seeing Alice. I mean, just holy crap, right? So that's my number one. Again, Alice had all the former members of the Spiders playing with him. I just unfreaking believable. I just wish I was there.
So meanwhile, both of you won't be on next week's show because you'll be in that time machine, right? Going back to 19.
Yes, yes.
As soon as
Sydney's, so I know ahead of time.
Out of here.
Yeah, I said that's it. Sydney's my phone a friend for this concert. She's got to
Yeah.
All right, Chris Allo, what do you got?
all right. 1986. I was too old to see or too young rather to see the original lineup of Venom. I still never seen the original lineup. I've seen Kronos and the solo band and his version of Venom and Venom Inc., but never saw the original band. But in '86, I rented a VHS from Crazy Eddie in Hartsdale, New York, which was the Seventh Date of Hell VHS, and it was fucking unbelievable. It was Venom at the Hammersmith Odeon in London, England, which I had gone to years later to see Sabbath, but this was in '84. Venom had more pyro than any show I have still ever seen to this day. They had lasers. They were blowing everything up. They were trashing instruments every song. They were sloppy as hell, but who the fuck cares? I mean, it was just Venom and just you know, they're sloppy on the record. They're sloppy in concert, but man, it's still one of the craziest shows I've ever seen. It's on the DVD now for the millionth reissue of Black Metal that came out a couple of years ago. But man, I just think them, you know, it was after At War with Satan and for the Seven Gates of Hell single. I mean, they were just at their peak, and that show just is still to this day just mind-boggling. And that would absolutely be my first, actually my third time machine trip. But I'd also buy a lot of toys and buy a lot of comic books, Pete, as you know, and you know, buy a lot of junk. I would absolutely have to throw my clothes out because I would have no room. But yeah,
no room for clothes in that suitcase, right? No,
absolutely. I'm coming back naked. I don't care how it looks.
You might get stopped by a border.
Yeah. By a time cop?
Border Patrol.
Yeah. Damn time cop.
All right, Butch, what do you got?
Great.
Well, I guess as you guys would expect or figure at some point you would hear it at least. So I would go back to 1977, and I remembered my my show and tell stuff this time. So I'm going back to 1977 to see Thin Lizzy after Brian Robertson came back to Thin Lizzy after they had already done the Bad Reputation album, and he did a couple of solos. But to see them on that tour in '77 with Robbo, good God. I mean, that's one of the only bands that I never really got a chance to see, was to see the real Lizzy with Gorm and Robbo. But goddamn, that band, I've met so many people over the years that have seen them, and they rub it in my face how great they were. And they saw them with Queen and how they blew Queen off the stage. And so, God, unfortunately, there's not a lot of video of that era of stuff, but there is some. But yeah, that would be my third pick right there, is to see the quintessential lineup of Thin Lizzy with Robbo and Gorham in '77 for sure. I don't care where it is, so I'm not being specific that it has to be at Madison Square Garden opening for Queen or whatever. I don't care where it is, just so I can see that original, those four in '77. On the Bad Reputation tour. That would be phenomenal.
I think we could dial up the Dublin, Ireland show for you and just send you on your merry way, right?
Go right there.
I'll go too. I did get to see them once in '79 with Gary Moore, which was phenomenal. But yeah, that was one of the concerts that I was debating on putting in there, was the original Thin Lizzy lineup. Well, that lineup, actually, not the original.
Well, you know what, Brian, now that you're here and you said that, I have to say this to you then. I have to say thank you from all the legion of Thin Lizzy fans out there, including myself, for the reissues that you did back in the 90s, right?
Yep.
So thank you.
Oh,
thank you for the
no
bottom
problem.
of my
Man.
heart.
That was one of the highlights of my career. I was so honored to be able to do that. And
That's awesome.
it still sends chills up my spine, mastering those records and stuff. Truly amazing.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right, our center square, Sydney.
Hey, well, first, before I get started, I want to share my shirt as well, because I told everybody before we started recording, this is an original Whitesnake shirt from '88. So for my Time Machine shows, I wanted to wear a Time Machine shirt to a show that I wish I could have gone to. That's not my pick, though. It's an honorable mention. I have a long list of them because I'm young and I missed everything. So my first pick, my picks are a little bit mixed between specific dates and just overall tours I wish I could have seen. My first pick is a specific date, and I will explain why. I'm also not getting too adventurous with my main picks. They're pretty me if you know me. So the first pick I have is Dokken in 1986. The specific show I'm talking about is at the Fox Theater in Detroit, which was on January 30th, 1986. And the reason that I'm picking that exact show is because Under Lock and Key is my all-time favorite Dokken album. Love that record. One of just my favorite records of all time. And I've scoured the internet trying to find footage of this tour, from videos to just every website you can imagine. I've tried to find videos of this tour, and the only footage that I've ever been able to find is a grainy recorded show from the Fox Theater show in 1986, at the end of January. So I've spent many hours watching that concert and reliving that. And so I would definitely pick that one to go back to, just because I've memorized it and it would be really cool to get to see that in person. So I love Dokken, and that's number 3 on my list, I guess.
There you go. Very cool.
Awesome.
All right, Mr. Keeler.
Ooh, I'm up.
You're not
All
last.
right, I'm not last this week. I'm usually the last. The last couple weeks I was the last in line, like Dio. Here we are. Well, thanks for having me again tonight. My number 3 for this week is going to be going to Madison Square Garden in 1973. I want to be part of the filming of the Song Remains the Same film for Led Zeppelin. I never got, when we first got asked this question, I kind of even reached out to Pete yesterday. Are we talking about bands we concert? So I never saw Zepp. I was old enough to go, probably. I mean, I was like 12. I could have went. I didn't have to go in a time machine, to be reborn or something to go to the show. I was born already, but of course I didn't make it to that, and I never got to see Led Zeppelin live. So I just watched a movie a few days ago. I actually watched it on Christmas Day. The Song Remains the Same movie. I revisited it. I hadn't watched it in quite a few years. And it kind of getting fueled a little bit because Stern Pinball actually made the Led Zeppelin pinball machine, which I am picking up tomorrow and I am bringing to my house. I'm not putting it in the store yet with the COVID and everything going on. Be something for me to play. So Led Zeppelin is my number 3.
Nice.
Awesome.
Nice.
Cool.
Ryan.
All right, well, I'm taking a little page from Steve Keeler and Chris Allo here. See, I didn't start going to shows till the mid-90s, so I could go back in time and pick 8 million shows. I'm going with 3 concerts that I could have totally gone to, and I just missed because I'm a dumbass and I have no reason. And maybe I go back in time and smack myself. And like, what the fuck are you doing? Go to the concert. So my first one's actually very recent. December 31st of, well, not last year, year before, 2019, I was invited to go up to Montreal. My favorite venue, now closed, was Catacombs, and it was the last show ever there. And the last show ever at this great little tiny club. They're putting on Montreal's greatest metal band. In fact, in my opinion, Canada's greatest metal band, newest down, Voivod. So Voivod played at this venue, and I had seen them. Actually, I saw Voivod twice in 2019. So I'm like, I don't feel like going up to Canada. And I could have actually driven over to Toronto the next day and seen Exciter. So it would have been Voivod and Exciter. And I'm like, I just don't feel like going up to Canada and driving around. I'm going to sit home. And of course, this shit hits COVID. So that would have been like my last chance to go see someone international. And I sat home like a fucking dumb fuck. Didn't go to either of those concerts. And now I really, really regret not doing it. I kind of would have regretted it anyways. But now it's like, and I wasn't doing anything. I was just sitting on my ass where I could have, it's like a 5-hour drive to Montreal, the 2-3 to Toronto, and then like 7 back. It's nothing, not a big deal. But didn't go. So I regret the hell out of that. So my first choice for shit I missed for no good reason is Voivod in 2019.
There you go. I wonder if you have like the most recent one that's going to come up today.
If anybody's more, well, I mean, that was literally before the pandemic.
Right before, yeah.
I don't know if anybody's more recent than that, but I regret the shit out of that. But there was no way to know that it was going to happen. So
no, exactly.
If I know, I would have definitely fucking gone.
Pete, do we get a prize for the one that's the closest to now or the one from the furthest back?
Yeah, well, we'll come up with a no prize. Free merchandise at your store, Steve. There you go.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, that didn't work. How did that happen?
I might give you something.
Free sticker, free rock band.
Hey, I was just there yesterday. I didn't get anything.
Hey, come on, Steve.
Did you get? I got one. I'm showing one of Pete's T-shirts here. The Hudson Valley Squares. I guess you can still buy them online, right, Pete? If any of you want to.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo.
I can tell Steve hasn't worn it because the sticker's still on it. So there you go.
Well, I haven't been out much, obviously.
I wore mine.
All right, kind of like
I'll
Mr.
wear it tonight.
Slagel, I'm going to go kind of chronological on mine. So I'm going to go to the oldest one first. So if you can kind of picture August of 1969. Hot, couple 100,000 people in Bethel, New York. I have always, since I was a little kid, would have loved to have been at Woodstock. I think Woodstock would have been absolutely amazing, even though it was probably an absolute, disaster zone and a mess. But man, to be amidst all those people, seeing Hendrix and The Who and Janis and the Dead and Santana and so on and so on and so forth. I just think that would have been the coolest thing ever. I remember as a kid growing up, watching that Woodstock film over and over and over again and thinking that's where I should have been. Unfortunately, I was only 3, but I was actually I wasn't that far from it that weekend, because we were actually living in Brooklyn, New York at the time, but we had the house I actually grew up in Goshen, New York. That was our summer home at the time. And I was actually up there with my parents, my grandparents, aunt and uncle and cousins. And we were all in Goshen, New York that weekend when they shut down the Thruway and Route 17, and people were just leaving their cars and walking up to Bethel. I don't remember, but my parents do. And I just always, since I was a kid, wished that I could go back in time and be at Woodstock. So that's my first choice for today.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, very good. I could have went too. I would have been 8 years old, but I had no idea it was even going on. My parents were sheltered. I was probably playing with Hot Wheel cars and probably had no care at all.
I had my dinosaurs and my little monster figures, and that's music wasn't quite on my radar just yet. So it would be soon though. But Nick, what do you got?
So that's pretty cool. Yeah, my first one, I'm going to go for, something that I was incapable of going to because I was 6 years old when it happened. But in light of my undying love for Iron Maiden, I think if I had a time machine, I would want to go to the Hammersmith Odeon in 1982 to see Beast over Hammersmith. I queued up I was looking at the CD, looking at the track list. I mean, it's just a tour de force of like their early material, with Bruce fresh in the band. And I think to be in that building, in that storied place, which I've never been to, I've never even been to London other than a quick jaunt through Heathrow on the way to another place. I think if I could jump in the old time machine back to March of '82 and be inside that building to see Iron Maiden at the absolute launch pad of their perfect lineup and perfect years, I think that would have been something I would have loved to have been at.
Yeah.
Beast over Hammersmith.
Very good.
So is Chris the only one out of all of us who has been to the Hammersmith? Brian, have you been to the Hammersmith?
Yeah, I've been there. I was just going to tell a quick story about that in a second.
Go for it.
So I almost picked that same show that he just picked, but I was lucky enough to see them a couple of years later at Hammersmith Odeon during the World Slavery Tour when they were recording the live album. I saw them 2 nights. I think they played 4. I saw them 2 of the 4 nights, and it was unreal. That place is really small. Yeah, it's like 2,600 seats. I thought it was like an arena or something. I go there, and I was 8th row for one of those shows, and they're literally like standing on my living room floor. It was amazing. So. Sorry to throw that in.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, that's amazing. That's another reason too, because it's not as big as I same thing. I thought it was like, I had no idea that it was that intimate.
So basically, and Chris, maybe you can compare because I know you've been to the Beacon. So it's basically a little smaller than the Beacon, then, right?
Just about, yeah. It's not very wide, and it goes kind of straight back. So the seats in the back, you're a little far away, but it's hard to explain because it's not similar to too many venues I've been to in the States, because it's not wide at all.
Yeah, Brian definitely nailed it. It's kind of like the Beacon is fairly deep or fairly long. I mean,
that's
it's not
the
like
pavilion right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely got the depth to it.
Yeah.
And it definitely has the vibe, sort of like Madison Square Garden. It's just one of those legendary places.
And when I went, because it's still there, but there's no seats. And when I went, there were seats, so everybody had a seat. So that was interesting to go there with that, because it made it even smaller. Like now, I think you can probably cram, 4,000 in with those seats in there.
Yeah, when I was there in 1992 for Black Sabbath, they definitely had seats.
Cool. All right, Brian, you're up.
By the way, side note, Ronnie James Dio hates Hammersmith Odeon. I saw him that same week I saw Maiden, And I was talking to him once about that show. He said, "Oh, I hate that venue. It's the worst venue ever. Everything's on. There's no elevators, it's stairs. The crews hate it. It's terrible." I was like, "No, don't say this. One of my favorite venues ever. Don't say that."
That's awesome.
So I'm going to go to April 6th and 7th in 1977 in Santa Monica, California, at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium, which is not too much larger than, well, probably about the same size as Hammersmith, about 2,600 people with no seats. And this was a show that I could have, I tried to get to it, but I didn't have a car. And fortunately, I didn't know anybody going. And of course, my mom's not going to let me go by myself on a bus. So I didn't go. I saw the ads and it hurt. It still hurts today that I missed this show. Rush and UFO in 1977, Santa Monica Civic, 2 nights. My good friend, Lizzie Borden, went to that show, went to both of those shows. So he grills me about that all the time. Makes me very angry. And they were amazing, apparently.
I bet.
I would have loved to have seen that tour. Butch is smiling because I think Butch saw that tour, right?
No, I didn't.
No.
I saw
So the one after, right?
Yeah, I saw 78.
Yeah, I saw 78 as well. So, but
With the
77 would have
Kimono.
been a lot better.
All right, Lynn, what do you got?
Another one that I wasn't born for. Picture this, February 9th, 1964 at 8:12 p.m. You're sitting home with 73 million other Americans watching the TV. What comes on? I wish I was there in the audience. It's the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. For me, that would have been killer. I can't, I mean, the first time the Beatles come and they're on the Ed Sullivan Show, 73 million people. Think about that. In the 60s, that's ridiculous, right? For the amount of people that would actually be watching that show.
Yeah.
So to me, that, and it's so funny because they were panning and they were showing Paul and they were showing George and they showed John and it says, "Sorry, ladies, he's married." I just thought that was kind of, I thought that was kind of funny. And the funny thing is that, you know, they played 3 songs. They played All My Lovin', Till There Was You, and then She Loves You. And then they dedicated that to Johnny Carson and Earl Wilson and Randy Carr. Then they took a break and then they played the last 2 songs, which was I Saw Her Standing There. And then John closed with I Want to Hold Your Hand. But when they did I Saw You Standing There, it was funny because George did this little thing on his Gretsch country gentleman guitar. And then Ringo did his little thing on the drums. And the girls literally like were hyperventilating because they were, it was, I would have been one of those girls. I, in fact, still am. But either way.
When you think about it too, like all of those early 70s bands, I just watched a bunch of stuff on the Beatles last night, which is really funny that you're mentioning this.
Yeah.
But like what early 70s band did not mention the Ed Sullivan Show as being like a major influence
iconic
in their career?
for
Like
sure.
it's the beat that just in and of itself, like it's insane how massive that was. So that's freaking
Got
awesome.
on Ed
It
Sullivan,
was.
you made it. That's basically what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely
really,
for sure was the catalyst
really
to get
big
them where they
show.
need to be.
That's right.
Right.
That's it for
That's
me.
a cool pick. I did not expect one like that. It's pretty cool.
Ringo, and I was supposed to see Ringo, and then freaking COVID hit, and now I'm supposed to go see Ringo this summer, and it's probably not going to happen, and I'm all upset.
You and these drummers, what is up with you and the drummers, huh?
I have a crazy thing. I don't know. It's a thing.
What's she always been like this?
Pretty much.
The thing. It's a thing. It's not my fault. The pound of the bass drum and the thing, and I don't know. I'm just kidding.
And the thing, and the
Yeah, the pounding of the bass drum in the thing.
You know, the thing with the thing. You know.
The thing.
I can't help it.
All right.
I think it's because they were the craziest ones in the band, you know? The other guys were kind of more predictable,
in most
but
cases.
the drummers were like the major F-ups, you know? So it was like, oh, hey, let me just go like that guy. You know? He needs help. I'm here to help him.
All right, Chris Allo, what do you got?
All right. Like I'm sure you know was already mentioned already. You know, I never saw Led Zeppelin. I saw Robert Plant and Jimmy Page and Plant and Page together, but never saw Zeppelin. But Pete, you know, I hate jamming. I hate that shit. I hate when Moby Dick is like 62 minutes long, and when Whole Lotta Love is like 48 minutes long, and I just hate that shit. And I actually prefer, you know, the later Led Zeppelin stuff, like, you know, Presence and
Hold that back up again, Steve. Hold that back up again.
Hates jamming. Boo.
Sorry, Steve. You know, I have the Blu-ray of Song Remains the Same, but I always fast forward through the 62-minute version of Dazed and Confused. I'm sorry.
No.
I just don't have the attention span. So I obviously then wanted to see later Led Zeppelin. So a lot of people say the Nebworth shows are from 1979, one of the greater shows. I watched the videos. It's a great, but at the same time, it's outside with 100,000 people in Europe. And I've been to European festivals, and they're tough to do, specifically because people are pissing everywhere on everything that's not nailed down. And I actually read how bathrooms were a big problem at the Nebworth Festival. So I'm totally not going there. Instead, I'm going to Zurich, Switzerland on June 29th, 1980 to see Zeppelin. They played the Hallen Stadium in Switzerland, which was only 13,000 people. They only did 15 songs. It was a 2-hour set. They cut out all the jamming and shit. Yeah, they were kind of sloppy. You know, I've played the tape. A couple of the songs, including Kashmir, was totally fucked up. It was a total botch job. But you know, Zeppelin were notoriously, you know, sloppy lots of times. But man, to see Zeppelin in a small place with just them playing, and I don't have to sit through, you know, a 4.5-hour show with all this jam. I could just see 2 hours of them playing. That would be great. Yeah, they don't look as sexy as they did in Song Remains the Same. You know, Robert Plant's not dressed like a lady, and you know, Jimmy Page doesn't have the sexy outfits. But I don't care. I'll just want the music, and so that's where I'm going. That was one of their last shows anyway. So that's my.
By the way, quick public service announcement: if anyone goes to European festivals, don't walk anywhere near any of the fences.
True.
Bullshit.
Don't lean on the fence.
Like anything you can lean on, and I'm sure Brian and you guys, some of you guys have been. Anything you can lean on or lean against or sit on anywhere someone has pissed before you've been there. Like,
I'll tell you what.
Like, you know, and like they would have like these giant troughs and everything.
Doesn't
they had
matter.
tons of facilities, but it didn't matter. Like
Doesn't matter.
they would just rip it out and piss anywhere.
That's what. At my first festival experience overseas was the Wacken Festival 2002 in northern Germany, and two things stand out in my mind besides the bands was that all the porta potties, like they had tons of porta potties. Something happened, and by like the second or third day, they all leaked, and they all just the ground but it overtook where people's camping grounds were. We were far enough away. And the other thing I noticed is that everybody shit in the same cornfield. So don't eat corn from northern Germany.
Good fertilizer.
Well fertilized.
2002 was that Bruce Dickinson and Blind Guardian as the headline?
Hell yes.
All right, I was at that one.
That was.
I didn't shit in the cornfield though.
I did shit in the cornfield. It was wonderful.
That's good.
I was there as well, but I stayed in a hotel. So
Yeah, me
Smart.
too.
I'd stay with you.
I stayed in a tent, and yeah, I've told stories about that one on here, Brian. That was my first experience overseas, and it was just, you know, in terms of a music fest, and I didn't know bands when they did sound checks. I didn't know that they really played. I mean, I kind of did, but I never really thought about it. I woke up. I told the story on here. I woke up to Blind Guardian playing. I was in love with them, and they were just playing a song, and I woke up hearing it like from far away, and I exploded out of the tent like half naked. Like, I'm missing Blind Guardian, and I was all hungover, and they're like, "No, you're not, idiot. It's a sound check."
Festival rule number one. Take your
I knew that. I knew that.
So we've been talking Woodstock. We've been talking a lot of Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin played Asbury Park the weekend of the Woodstock Festival.
Yeah,
So Chris, you could have went there. It would have been closer.
They turned down Woodstock.
Yeah, they were playing Asbury Park. So Chris, it would have been closer for you to just go down to Asbury Park.
to see Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's 69. I want to see some of the later stuff.
No, okay.
Like on my show, they were doing like Achilles' Last Stand and Nobody's Fault But Mine.
Yeah, okay.
The non-jamming show, right? Okay.
That's the other thing too. Yeah, I really can't stand that stuff.
All right, Butch, what do you got?
Well, even though Thin Lizzy is my favorite band of all time, they did make it to be number 3, but they're not my second or first choice. So, but these will be no surprise to anybody. So I'm going back to 1979. So, and this is my favorite album of all time. So again, even though Lizzy's my favorite band, this is my favorite album of all time. And for me to be able to see Edward Van Halen in 1979 on a Van Halen 2 tour would just make my life. I don't have a specific show that I need to be at. I don't give a shit. I just need to be at a show in 79 anywhere.
No, you don't want to say that. I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt you because I went to the Forum show in 1979 and they were all so drunk and wasted. They basically just jammed for about 45 minutes, played 2 songs, left the stage or was booing, and they finally came back later and played a couple songs. One of the worst concerts I've ever been to. So go to any other show than that one.
That's good advice.
But you know what, though? Even that, though, it's probably a cool memory. As fucked up as they were, it's probably still a cool memory that you saw them all fucked up on stage like that.
I guess. I don't know.
I do have a bootleg from the first show of the tour from Fresno, so that would be a cool one to go to as well. So, but yeah, anything from Van Halen 2 tour 1979 would make me very,
I think there's video of that Fresno show too. I think there's like half an hour of video. It's actually really good.
And you know what, though? I believe it got pulled recently. That guy, Fresno Restoration, that guy had done so much phenomenal work on so many different bands of that same era. But yeah, I saw someone had said just recently that all that stuff got pulled. So I guess maybe he got in trouble.
Ooh, that's a shame.
Yeah, because he did a lot of work too.
He did. Yeah, he did. Jesus, that was a good
Great choice.
I had a feeling you were going to pick some VH there.
Oh, yeah.
I knew that was coming.
Edward.
All right, Sydney, back to you.
All right, so the next one comes at no shock. I'm going to go with Alice Cooper. I'm going to do a show from Alice Cooper. Now, this is really hard for me because, you know, I've seen Alice many times, but there's nothing like seeing an artist like this in their prime, you know, when he was actually like really Alice Cooper, you know, which he still is. He still does a great job, but you know what I mean? So this was hard for me because I would have been happy seeing Alice at any point in his career in the early 70s. But for me, as I've talked about here before, my favorite album of all time is From the Inside. That's my favorite album ever. And the problem with this tour, and I'm choosing the Madhouse Rock Tour, which was in support of From the Inside. And the only reason that I was hesitant in choosing this to begin with is because this was a period of time where Alice was not performing at his best. He was very screwed up on various substances, and it was not his best performance in that time period. But I had to pick this because I've seen him only do, I saw him do Sirius a couple tours ago. He did, but he doesn't really bring a lot of, you know, songs from the inside into his set. You know, he really doesn't do it very often. It's a diehard fan favorite, but he really doesn't like to include a lot of it in its set. So my favorite Alice Cooper song of all time is How You Gonna See Me Now? And that is the only tour that he has ever played that song live. You know, in 40 years, he's never played that song live again. That tour was it. So I have to go with the Madhouse Rock Tour. Again, I don't have a specific show. The April 9th, 1979 show was the show that they recorded for the DVD. It's like The Strange Case of Alice Cooper. So I guess if I had to pick a specific date, it would be that one. But I have to go with that tour because it's just, those songs can't be beat for me. So that's my number 2.
By the way, I saw that tour 3 times. And even though Alice was super thin, he was great. And the band was great. That was one of my favorite Alice Cooper tours. So don't feel bad about picking that one. It's a good one.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because, like I said, I've seen the DVD, and you know, there's some spotty parts in the DVD where you're like, you know what I mean? I still think he did great, but it's nice to hear from a perspective that was there that he was still kicking it. You know,
it was great.
That's awesome.
Isn't that the tour that he had? What's his face on guitar from Elton John's band?
Yep, Danny Johnston.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, he was on there, and I think he had a majority of Elton John's band at that time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it was bass player, drummer, and Danny, I think.
Because he was working with Bernie Taupin at that time, so it makes a lot of sense that he would have had that in, you know. So.
Yeah. Good choice.
Cool.
All right, Mr. Keeler.
All right, so I was debating. You picked earlier, Pete, the Woodstock, of course. You know, due to the proximity, of course, to my shop and my life being around the Bethel, area and Woodstock '69 and how epic that was. But then I got thinking on my list is like I never saw Tull, I never saw the Doors, two bands that I really love. I love the Doors so much. So I'm gonna go to the Isle of Wight, 1970, the Isle of Wight Festival. Of course, the debut of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, who I did get to see later on, but never in their very prime years. Of course, Tull was there, Hendrix, ELP, Sly and the Family Stone, the Who, the Moody Blues, Free was there, and that seemed like one of the epic concerts that I could have went to in my time machine. The Isle of Wight, 1970.
Yeah, I think if you're not going to do Woodstock, that's like the next best thing, right?
Yeah, because you did get a couple bands that weren't at Woodstock too.
Yeah.
And I would love to have seen Jethro Tull in 1970.
Yeah.
Ian Anderson was like a wild man then. I still love watching the footage from early Tull and watching Ian on stage. So plain and simple, I'm going with Isle of Wight. I'm short and sweet as usual, I guess, with my comments. So.
Good choice. Good choice. I would like to go to that one as well.
You might want to go along.
I'll come with you, man. I'll come with you.
That'll be another one, I guess. Will people be peeing all over at that one, Chris and Brian? Or is that way before?
Who knows? Probably.
Did they have better hygiene back in 1970? Probably not.
Well, I don't know. In England, they throw bottles of pee on the stage, so you never know.
Oh. They said
But
there
they
was
used to, not anymore.
There was almost 700,000 people at that festival.
Holy
Yeah.
shit.
How did you not see Jethro Tull ever? I think I've seen them like 10 times.
I don't know how, Brian. It's like a band that maybe like I would have loved to see in the 70s, but maybe when I started going to most of my show in the 80s, it was another thing where I was more into the heavier stuff, where I've kind of dropped some of the classic stuff. And I think that's exactly what happened with Jethro Tull. And I'm not, I should have been able to see him, but never have seen Ian Anderson solo or anything. No.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Scow, back to you.
All right, so I'll bring in a little black metal, a little death metal here. So when it comes to that stuff, I've traveled a lot. I've seen pretty much every underground black and death metal band that everyone would want to see. At this point, I've seen them multiple times, except for two. My top two of my favorite bands ever, more obscure stuff. I had opportunities to. I fucked up. I didn't go. Now they're both gone. I doubt they'll ever reunite. So I'll pack two in here real quick. Just they're both pretty obscure. First one is Australian band, one of my favorite Australian bands. Very obscure. It's kind of like mix of early Creator, Motorhead, and that Australian like fuck you spirit. So it's Gospel of the Horns. Got the flag there too. And they toured the U.S. Just one time. They've been around. They were around for like 25 years. They toured in 2008, West Coast all the way up to Chicago. I could have gone. I didn't go. I had a couple opportunities. I knew some people in those cities, and that was the only time they ever toured here. Then they broke up. That's the end of that. And the second chance was from Kansas City. One of my favorite American black death metal bands is Order from Chaos. This is their last album, and they were from the early 90s. They were for around a couple years. They broke up a little before my time. Then they reunited, played a couple shows, and I actually had to look this up. So they played January 2nd, 2010. They played Kansas City, their hometown. A couple friends of mine from Chicago went down. Apparently it was like a blinding blizzard. There was like 8 people there because of the blizzard. They said the band kicked ass. I don't think I would have been able to go to anyways because of the blizzard in hindsight. But of all the bands I wish I had seen, those were the two I missed. No chance now. So thankfully, I've seen pretty much everything else, but those are the two bands. A little Gospel of the Horns, a little Order from Chaos. Very obscure, but to me, it meant a lot. I would have liked to see both of them. I would have had a good time.
Cool that you've seen most of the bands you've ever wanted to see. That's pretty cool, though.
Yeah, my list is very, very. I'm kind of like Butch in this regard. When it comes to black and death metal, my list is very short. Some bands like I haven't seen because just I'm a little too young, or they just never toured the States, or if they played Europe, it was like it wasn't really a convenient thing to do. But those bands, I had a solid opportunity. I had the means, I had the money. I could have gone there, and I just didn't go. And in hindsight, I regret the hell out of it. So I kind of have packed those two in there. So, but otherwise, I'm doing pretty good. So I just have to regret those two choices.
All right. So for my next choice, I'm going to go from 69 to 71. Shea Stadium. When exactly was this? July 9th, 1971. This band and the opener, because I want to mention both here, sold out Shea Stadium quicker than the Beatles did a bunch of years before. Grand Funk Railroad and Humble Pie with Mr. Steve Marriott. I never got to see Steve Marriott ever. And I'm a huge Grand Funk Railroad fan. I mean, they were like on top of the world at the time. Critics hated them. People loved them. I've seen some of the footage. I've heard some of the audio. It sounded like an amazing show, jam-packed. I think they had like 60,000 people there or something like that. And just the set list of both bands, amazing. And it's just both bands were like at their peak at that point in time. So, Peter Frampton had just left Humble Pie not long before. Clem Clemson's in. Humble Pie's doing big business, and Grand Funk Railroad, of course, are releasing all those early great, albums with them as the original power trio. And I think that would have been, again, for a New Yorker to my old stomping ground, Shea Stadium, my beloved Mets, I think that would have been a perfect show to see. Unfortunately, I was only 5 years old, so that was not going to happen. But I'm going to hop in that time machine and go back to that show.
I think that's a very overlooked show that people don't think about how huge Grand Funk Railroad were then. Because they're not one of the bands that you think of in 2020 or 2021. You would think, oh my God, that they sold out Shea Stadium. Some people would go, wait a minute, they did? But that's a legendary concert. I've come across so many people in my record shop over the year coming in and saying that they had been to that show. The older generation, the generation above me, and going to Grand Funk. I saw the Who at Shea Stadium on their farewell tour in 1983.
I was there.
Of course, I've seen the Who probably 5 or 6 times since. So.
Yeah, I know they weren't going anywhere.
Well, we thought, Linda and I was like, let's go down there. It's the last time they ever get to see the Who. We'll go. Of course, that's another time machine for me. I never got to see Keith Moon, so.
Yeah, me neither.
Of course, that got covered on going to the Isle of Wight in '70, I guess. So
that is true. That is true. All right, Nick Franco, back to you.
Okay, so I'm going with a concert that I didn't know was going to take place until after they released the album, and I could have been at it because it happened 2007. And what I'm talking about is the Swedish symphonic metal band Therion. And for those familiar with Therion, you know how wonderful they are. But for people who maybe are not familiar, they began as a death metal band, and then the main composer said, I want to mix classical music in. And they became, they synthesized classical music into their music and created like a symphonic sort of thing. But they did it in such a way I feel is more genuine and more just unique. Like I'm talking like full on classical orchestra with heavy metal, but mixed in such a way that I'd say from 1996 to 2004, every album they put out to me was perfect. Like they were just, what a run. And in 2007, they decided to put on a show at the Miskolc Opera Festival in Hungary. And the DVD is amazing because it's the band and they're wearing like tuxedos, but they got their guitars and bass and everything and long hair. And then surrounding them is like an entire full orchestra and a bunch of people, like vocal choir. And they play their music to this unbelievable, like it already lends itself to the orchestra, so it's super powerful. But they also went and they played Verdi, Dvorak, Mozart, Saint-Saëns, and Wagner. And I don't know, I don't really talk about it very much, but I do like classical music to some degree. And some of that classical music, like Wagner, that was the death metal of its time. Like that was the crazy metal of its time. So they metal it up, but they play like, Dies Irae from the Requiem, just such a strange, meeting of genres. And it really worked really well. And God damn, I would have loved to been at that audience. There was like all metalheads sitting down trying to be normal, and then classical appreciators. It was like a whole, only in Europe. and nobody trashed the place. I don't think anybody peed anywhere. I think they only peed in the bathroom for that one. But it was super cool to hear them play like old school classical pieces in metal, So that's what I picked.
I caught them in New York City in like, I don't know, it was like maybe 2006 or 7. It was like a really wacky show because they had like all these opera singers come out with them. Like it was just really weird. I mean, it was unique, and I really enjoyed and appreciated it. But I got to meet Christopher that night, and very intelligent guy.
Yeah, he talked to me, my friends, till like 5 a.m. one night because every time they played, I went, and he is a very interesting guy to talk to. He knows all about the occult and history, and he's a funny guy. He said he has long hair, I remember him saying that in Stockholm where he lives, like he's like, my neighbors think I'm a drug dealer because I don't work and I just come in and out of my house. I have long hair and they don't know what I'm about because like he didn't have a regular job. But he's an interesting cat. But yeah, they were very good, but they haven't toured here in a while. It's too expensive. Too many people, too many moving parts.
Yep, exactly. Cool choice. All right, Brian, back to you for your final pick for the day.
Final pick. So this show I actually could have gone to. And in retrospect, I curse this. I don't have very many regrets, but this is one major regret I have. So it's Judas Priest at the Whiskey A Go-Go in 1978 on the Stained Class tour, which is my favorite.
Would have been awesome
Judas Priest album. So at that point, I'm going to concerts. I have a car, and I'm trying to go to every concert I can. Maybe 3 days before that show, 2 or 3 days, I can't remember. It was in the middle of summer, so it was super hot, like probably 115 degrees in LA or whatever. So I shut the car door. It was a Plymouth Duster. It was like one of the worst cars ever, but it got me around. So I shut the door, and the driver's side window door shatters. And I'm like, oh, what the? Shocking. So the show was like 1 or 2 nights later, and I couldn't get it fixed. I didn't have the money to get it fixed. And I was worried about driving to Hollywood. Hollywood was not a particularly great place in the 70s. So I was worried if I drove down there, my car's going to get stolen. Meanwhile, I don't think anybody was stolen that piece of garbage. So I should have just gone, crossed my fingers, and went to that show, because what a legendary show that was. And I missed it because stupid windshield smashed my car door. So that was not fun. 2 real quick honorable mentions. Iron Maiden, which is my all-time favorite band. Thin Lizzy #2, by the way. Iron Maiden at the Marquee Club in London in probably 1980, 81. Any of those new wave of British heavy metal shows would have been amazing. And the only band that I didn't really see that I really wanted to see was Rainbow with Dio. So any one of those shows. So those are my 2 honorable mentions. Probably I could list 100 more, but
yeah, right.
But there you have it.
Awesome.
Very cool. All right, Lynn, back to you.
Yeah. I'm down with the Rainbow with Dio. I tell you that. I'm definitely down with
We
that.
all are.
Yeah, it'll have to be a very large time machine. We all have to go, like a family road trip, So I'm a little nervous about my third pick, because you guys just kind of blasted all the freaking festivals, and so now I'm like kind of grossed out. I'm not really sure I want my time machine to go back here, but for me, like, I was always like, oh my God, Castle Donington festivals, holy crap, like that was a big thing, And so for me, like the Monsters of Rock 1984, which was AC/DC, which they headlined twice. Van Halen, it was the final appearance with David Lee Roth in the UK. So, and I love David Lee Roth, and I love Van Halen, right? So to see, I actually had his, which you probably remember, I think you do remember that, where he was chained to a fence. He had the black leather pants and no shirt on. That was on above my ceiling. That was the best poster ever. But yeah, Ozzy, Gary Moore, huh?
The poster from Women and Children First.
Yes, you still have it though. I don't have it.
I do.
I need to come in and smuggle it or steal it from you. But Gary Moore, Y&T, except Motley Crue, like, I don't know. To me, that would have been just killer to be at. But you guys got me a little worried, because now I'm not sure about the whole peeing situation.
Yeah.
That's
The festival, you guys kind of got me.
It's not that bad. It's just the Europeans. Only thing you have to worry about at Donington is if it rains, it's just a mud fest. We just need to wear mud boots the whole time.
Yeah, I'm down with whatever, but that would have been a cool tour to see. But my honorable mentions, right? So, and again, this really couldn't happen because I'm a chick, but if I was a guy and I was incarcerated back in the day, Johnny Cash live at San Quentin prison, I think that would have been cool. Except maybe I would have been a CO or something. But I think that would have been a cool concert to be at. Any Elvis Presley show, because I love Elvis. I didn't see Randy. I think Butch did. I'm not sure, but I didn't see Randy Rhoads. I would have loved to see him.
I did.
Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich, any of those guys, like any of the orchestras, and Frank Sinatra, like, to be in any of those shows and be a fly on the wall would have been really cool.
Well, I'll tell you this, and I'm not boasting, but I saw Randy Rhoads at the Whiskey and Quiet Riot at the front of the stage with my friend who was taking guitar lessons from him. It was pretty amazing.
I'm totally jealous of that. You can boast. You can share pictures if you have them. I'm down.
Like an idiot, I didn't take any pictures. I didn't really know who he was. My friend said I had taken guitar lessons from this really great guy in Quiet Riot. I knew who Quiet Riot was, but I was kind of like, yeah. And I went and saw them, and the band was horrible, but he was obviously incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I was gonna say, Quiet Riot wasn't good when Randy was with him, but Randy was great.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. But that's my shtick.
So Brian, being a Vegas guy, did you ever see Sinatra?
No. I can't remember if he was still playing out here, but I didn't. I wanted to go to probably one of his later shows, but yeah, never got to, unfortunately. Never saw Elvis either, obviously.
Yeah.
That was a staple of my Sunday dinner every Sunday with the macaroni, meatballs, Frank Sinatra, kind of went hand in hand.
My house too, Lynn. Sinatra and Dean Martin every weekend.
Oh yeah. Amen.
Yep.
Cool.
All right, Chris Allo.
All right. My absolute first pick for 100 years. The one show I would love to see. Even though I saw this particular lineup of the band 18 times, Black Sabbath on the Mob Rules tour, particularly opening night of the tour, November 15th, 1981 in Quebec. Sabbath, 80, 81, 82 would usually do like 10, 11 and a half songs. Since it was the opening night of the tour, they actually wound up doing 15 songs, songs that they would, rarely ever do again, like Country Girl, Turn Up the Night, Slipping Away. That's my Mob Rules is my all-time favorite album. Mob Rules, my all-time favorite album cover. So I just want to go see the show. And also I want to buy everything from the merch stand, like every shirt, every size. And then I want to recreate the merch booth at my house. So
awesome.
Killer.
I was lucky enough to see the Mob Rules tour at Glens Falls Civic Center.
Saw it. I'm sure Brian saw it. There's that movie from like 20 years ago called Strange Days, where you could like steal somebody's memories and download it and then implant it into your head. So I have a ton of friends who have seen Sabbath on the Mob Rules tour. I figure if there's no time machine, if I just live them long enough, they'll come up with that, and then I'm stealing everybody's memories and putting them all in my head, because I guess that's probably the only way I'm ever going to see it.
Yeah, I'm with you, Chris. I never got to see it either, so we're together on that one.
It was
great.
You can tap into
That's
my
my
head.
second favorite Sabbath album.
See the Johnny Van Zant band getting booed off the stage, and then the Conquering Chorus come on, right?
They had some shitty openers on that run. The Alvin Lee band, Johnny Van Zant, like who?
Doc Holliday, I think the Outlaws, right? Yeah,
I think I saw him with Doc Holliday, actually.
might have. Yep.
Brian, where did you see them?
I saw them at the LA Coliseum. It was part of a festival at that point. So I think like Blue Oyster Cult was on there and Pat Travers. They had merged the tour with something else. It was pretty cool. I have a really good bootleg of it.
The Black and Blue tour, Black Sabbath, Blue Oyster Cult.
I saw that too, but that was a separate tour. So they did. Yeah, this was a big festival. They just put a bunch of bands. I think there were like a couple tours that were coming around at the same time, and then they obviously ended up seeing the Black and Blue tour as well. That was at an arena though.
Yeah, I saw the Black and Blue also.
Yeah, I missed that one.
Yeah, that'd be my honorable mention if I was coming up with any, because
Awesome.
I got like a list of like 50 of them. But yeah, that'd be my own seeing Sabbath on the Heaven and Hell tour.
All right, Butch, back to you.
Well, going with my shirt, 1978, and Chris's favorite band, seeing Van Halen opening for Black Sabbath in '78, when the revolution was beginning. Again, with me being silly, that just being able to see Edward Van Halen for a half hour on a small little, not, well, I want to say small stage, but I guess a big stage, but having no room up front. But to be able to see Eddie just I can't even get it out. Just knowing that you were watching something and you probably couldn't grasp what was happening when you saw it, but you knew something was happening, and just then, yep. I've seen some videos, and I have lots of bootlegs of it, but my God, to be able to see Van Halen opening for Sabbath in '78, man, just like I said, just to know that you were there when the guitar revolution was beginning, that, oh my God, that would have been it.
They were great. I saw them on that tour, but again at a festival at the same place, the Coliseum. And yeah, they were phenomenal. As bad as they were afterwards, they were phenomenal that night. But I wasn't looking at your shirt. I was looking at the Wayne Gretzky poster behind you.
Well, Brian, I don't know if you remember me all that well, but you and I have had many conversations over the years about hockey. So, when we were waiting for you to come on, I was teasing your king. So I'm not going to say anything now.
All right, no worries.
But if I'm going to I'll give a couple of quick honorable mentions. One, going to Pete's T-shirt. I would have loved to have been able to see the Pat Travers band when he had Pat Thrall and Tommy Aldridge and Mars Cowling in like 78, 79. Because as far as I'm concerned, that band right there was one of the greatest hard rock bands ever. They weren't around for a real long time, but that band was on fire. 1983, I don't remember the date because I didn't think to look it up before, but Motorhead in 1983 played at the Chance in Poughkeepsie, New York, with Brian Robertson playing guitar from Thin Lizzy, playing in Motorhead. I knew about Motorhead. I knew about the show. I wasn't quite yet a big Motorhead fan yet, but I knew him. I was 15, I guess. And I missed that. And that was the one only chance I've ever come close to being able to see Brian Robertson. And he is the number one guy on my list that I want to see and meet is Robbo. So God, I wish I could have seen that. Like you had said, would have loved to have seen 76 and seen Rainbow Rising Tour with Cozy and Ronnie. That would have been phenomenal. And obviously there's so many more. 85, Loudness. I did not get a chance to see Akira Takasaki in '85. As a lot of people that have gotten to know me know how much I love Akira. And oh my God, that would have been killer too. So there's a couple, but I'm just happy just talking about it.
Nice.
There's so many I know, right? We do this for hours here.
One more. Because everyone else will be really disappointed if I don't mention his name today. This will be the one time I haven't mentioned his name. So 1983 again, Thin Lizzy final tour with John Sykes. So there it is. There's my John Sykes reference for the day, everybody. I would have loved.
Has anybody seen John Sykes? Has he?
John Sykes is dead.
Oh,
I saw him like 4 years ago at some event in LA. I forget. It might have been, I don't know what it was. He was with Eddie Trunk, actually.
Okay.
But that was like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, sooner or
I
later.
got one thing I wanted to add.
He's still good.
So Brian, thank you tonight because you got to mention Wayne Gretzky. So Butch, you don't actually have to show a picture. So that worked
The
out
picture's
perfect.
always there. I just have to move.
But usually you come up and you show a little something. He has to do his every week. He has to mention Gretzky and Sykes. Well, no,
Yes.
it's a Patrick Sharp. One of them, all three, right? Cool.
Gretzky is God.
Great choices, Butch.
Thanks.
All right, Sydney, what's your last pick of the day here?
All right, so my last pick, I am representing him for my vinyl pick of the week. I never got to see David Bowie live, which absolutely breaks my heart because he is one of my favorite artists of all time. And honestly, thanks to him, I'm talking to you all right now because he's what made me, love rock and roll and music. So David Bowie, it's hard because again, I never got to see him at all. So I would take anything at this point. anything. But if I had to pick one, I would probably pick 1972. Obviously, tour in support of Ziggy Stardust. That was such just an influential album in my life, you know, in so many people's lives. So if I had to pick one, I'd probably pick that tour. And I do have to kind of pay tribute to him and his passing, because it was 5 years ago today that I found out, and we all found out, and it was like those heartbreaking days of my life. So yeah, I have to go with David Bowie as my number one, just because it was my dream to see him, and I was waiting for him to tour, and he, you know, sadly passed away. So he's my number one. I have a lot of honorable mentions, but I'm gonna go through them fast. Again, I wasn't alive for a lot of this stuff, so I'm just wishing I could have been there. My first honorable mention, which almost made my list, was Operation Mindcrime, Operation Live Crime. I would have killed to see that show live. That's one of my favorite albums of all time. I watch Operation Live Crime religiously. You know, I've never gotten to see the Queensryche lineup, the classic lineup live, which is so upsetting. I've seen Jeff Tate, I've seen the, you know, Queensryche lineup that's now, but to see them doing that album in its entirety just would have been freaking amazing. So that's on my list.
Amazing.
It was.
It was freaking amazing.
One day, man, when the time machine's invented, man, I'm gonna go back. Just watch.
Because I bet you in a couple of years you'll get that reunion. There's still a chance.
Yeah, but it's never gonna be what it was. You know, it's like Jeff Tate's never gonna. He sounds great still, and I don't want to hear anything. I think he still sounds great too, but you know, it's never gonna be the same. But that's 1989 or 88, whatever, you know, between those years. I would have loved to see that show. Next up, I have Whitesnake in 1989. I love the lineup with Adrian Vandenberg and Steve Vai, and Rudy Sarzo. Now You're Gone is one of my favorite songs ever, so I'm going to get crap for that, but I love that song. I love that tour. I love all of Whitesnake, but if I could have seen them do the classics and the newer songs, I would have loved to see that tour in 1989.
That was a really great tour, and I enjoyed it. I'm just Butch's.
I know. God forbid. I know. I don't mention John Sykes. I'm gonna get crucified over here. But
Pay no attention to the man.
I thought it was great, and when you like watch the Now You're Gone video, it like puts you in this like, oh, it's probably such a fun show. So definitely that tour. Tesla, The Great Radio Controversy, another one of my favorite albums of all time. Would have killed to see that tour live. I've seen Tesla, but again, haven't seen him do. One of my favorite songs in the world is Lady Luck. Have never seen him do that. They've only really done it on that tour, and that's about it. Would have loved to see that. What's it called? Lynn mentioned it. I would have loved to see Randy with Ozzy, Diary of a Madman tour in 1982. That would have been just killer. You know, so many people missed that. So, you know, I would have, along with everybody, would have wished I could have seen that. Then I also have Dio, Holy Diver in 1983, because man, I never got to see Dio either. So I think I have a longer list of all the stuff I've never gotten to see that I have got to see. Never got to see.
Definitely your age, you know, it's your age.
Yeah, it
you
sucks.
missed out on all the stuff. That's what I said. You've got a list of a million things you're gonna want.
Yeah, so I'm almost done. I promise.
That's fine.
I had a Holy Diver again. It's just one of my favorite albums too. Devastated I never got to see him. And it's funny because when I was younger, my dad's favorite artist is Dio, and we had the opportunity to go to his last ever show in New Jersey. And I was young at the time. I wasn't that young, but I was, you know, my dad kind of passed up because he was like, we were on vacation and we were like he was playing, I think, in Atlantic City, and we were in Wildwood or something. And my dad was like, oh, we'll just see him the next time. And that was his last ever show. It was like August something 2009 or whatever, and it was last show. But how are you supposed to know? You know, you don't know. So definitely Dio. I also have the US Festival. That would have been one that I wish I could have gone to. They had, you know, the 3-day festival, the heavy metal day, the, you know, day where Stevie Nicks and David Bowie played. That would have been a great one. And then I also wanted to give an honorable shout out to Live Aid, because I mean, man, that was everybody. So to have been there, my dad was at Live Aid in Philly, but you know, to have all those bands there just would have been amazing. But I could go on forever. You know, just check my Twitter. I'm bitching about it all the time, about all the shows that I never got to go to. So if you want to see me just freak out about stuff on the daily, you can find me there, and you'll hear about all of the other shows I wish I could have gotten to go to. But those are my honorable mentions. So
Hey, Chris, I think Sydney needs that little drill in the head, little concoction you were talking about.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Make them in China soon.
We all do.
Burns my
Yeah,
ass.
we definitely all need that music regardless or anything
Oh,
right
yeah.
now. We just want to go back to some normalcy. So yeah, pick any year in the last 30 years. I'll go with you right now.
Yeah, seriously.
All right, Steve, what's your final pick of the day?
Well, we're gonna go time machine. Hey, Chris, boot it up. 1974. You got it going there. 74. We're gonna go to California. We're going to Cal Jam 74. Or the California Jam, the original one.
That's a good one.
Crazy lineup. One of the epic lineups. I still have the Black Sabbath poster, of course, with the giant rainbow behind it.
Yep.
I still have that hanging up in my store, which has survived, I think, 3 versions of the store now. Got some holes in it, but what a crazy lineup. I was looking at it earlier today. Like Rare Earth opened up, and I used to deal with the percussionist from Rare Earth. They used to sell me like concert posters for years and pipes at my store. And Rare Earth, then it was Earth, Wind, and Fire, the Eagles, Seals and Crofts, Black Oak, Arkansas, as things started to get heavier, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, and rounding things out was Emerson, Lake and Palmer. ELP got pissed off at Deep Purple because Deep Purple refused to go on. I guess made everybody wait around until it got dark for them to go on. And ELP didn't go on till 1 a.m. But it was one of the legendary concerts. Of course, I never got to see Deep Purple with the Coverdale Hughes, the Mark III, which I would have covered my bases with that day. I did get to see Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Of course, now I picked them twice now between Isle of Wight and Cal Jam. So also one of my favorite bands. And I didn't see Black Oak, Arkansas until they played here in Middletown at Brian's Backyard Barbecue. So I never got to see them. And going back and seeing them live here in Middletown, I reached back in after hanging out with them and reached back in to see how huge they were in the 70s, playing all these giant festivals with Jim Dandy and everything. So that's my pick. Of course, there was a couple bands you could probably go get a beer and go take a pee. And I mean, in California, probably had to go use the restroom. You didn't just pee everywhere. Guess you're really wasted or tripping on something. But Cal Jam 74, I thought that was one of the epic concerts that I've always talked about. And I think Chris and a lot of people my age have talked about Cal Jam. And then, of course, I have the record sitting here from the Cal Jam 78, which was another big deal back in the day. And which I saw the mini tour that came off into the Meadowlands, which was one of the first concerts I ever attended, which was Aerosmith, Ted Nugent, Journey, and Frank Marino on Mahogany Rush.
Good
So,
pick. That's also the show that Blackmore hit the cameraman with his Stratocaster.
I got a couple honorable mentions. I saw Pink Floyd on Division Bell. Never saw them back in the day, which I would have loved to. Never saw the Beatles, like Lynn. Another band you gotta, would have liked to see. I never saw Elvis, the King, because I'm going back. I'm 60 years old. And I'll take any Hellfest in France because I've never been to that. And every year when I see the lineups for that Hellfest in France, I just think it's the most amazing lineups ever. But I never get to go away with my situation with the store and everything. I don't get to travel to Europe. I never have. But the Hellfest in France, it's always epic every year, the lineup for that shows. So I guess that's all that Keeler's got to offer today. Thanks for having me on. And I think it's been a very cool show tonight. Very, very, a lot of good picks.
Absolutely. Tons of them. Good choice, Steve. Ryan, what's your last one?
All right, so I'm going to piggyback on Aloe here. So obviously I was way too young to see Sabbath on the Mob Rules tour, but the number one concert that I could have seen, and I have no reason for missing it, and if I could go back in time and like punch myself in the face 30 times for missing this, it was March 30th, 2007, Heaven and Hell, Black Sabbath, played Radio City Music Hall with Dio. I didn't go. I love this album. I don't know why I didn't go. I wasn't dead. I wasn't in the ER. Those are the only valid excuses I can think of. So I have the DVD. It's fucking amazing. Every song they played is 10 out of 10 perfect. Obviously, like Dio and Sabbath doesn't get any better than that. So that's the single biggest regret I have for concerts. I should have, and I'm sure a bunch of you guys went to that show or saw that tour. Yeah, and I don't know what I was doing. No valid reason for not going. So
I saw it in Florida.
I hate you, Nick.
I
had no valid reason. I mean, it was my own dumb fault. I didn't go. So
yeah, it was really good.
And my only I'll go two honorable mentions. First one's end of March 1981. I've seen Motorhead many times, but I would have loved to see the original Lemmy, Phil, Fast Eddie, and the end of March 81's when they recorded No Sleep Till Hammersmith. Actually wasn't at Hammersmith, that show, but I think it was in Leeds, England, and somewhere else in England. But I would love to see any of the shows on that tour. And for classic New York bands, the one old New York band I would have loved to see back in the day would have been Carnivore, early on when they were still playing with the like barbarian caveman outfits. Right when they started, Pete Steele at his when he was young and just absolutely insane. I've heard a lot of stories about Carnivore back then at like L'Amour's. It was like a fucking absolute chaos. Great band. I know they played a bunch with Nuclear Assault and Whiplash, I think. I would love to see any of that stuff, but I was only like 2 or 3. So saw Carnivore on the reunion tour, but Pete was getting up there. I think that was not long before he died, and his health wasn't so good. And they still kicked ass. But to see them in like the mid '80s would have been fucking awesome. So those are my 2 honorable mentions.
Definitely.
Carnivore, that's a great choice.
I would have loved to see them back
I
then.
saw them in Lemoore in '87 with Blood Feast and Overkill, but they did not have the armor.
Yeah, they only did the armor for a little while. It was a pretty
Yeah.
short phase. I think they stopped. I think even before the first album came out. But yeah, to see them early on would have been freaking awesome.
USA for USA.
All right, my final choice. I'm going to kind of mix around here because my original final choice was a Led Zeppelin pick because I think half of us wanted to pick Zeppelin here. I'm going to go with something a little off the beaten path here, but I always would have loved to have seen this particular lineup of this band. I'm a big Genesis fan, right? But back in the early 70s, they had a guy named Peter Gabriel singing for them. And I've heard from many people and read all sorts of cool stuff about what it was like to see Genesis with Peter Gabriel wearing all the weird outfits and makeup and masks and all this kind of freaky stuff, dressing up like a fox or this, that, or the other thing. And they played at the Felt Forum in New York City, February 22nd, 23rd, 1974, on the Selling England by the Pound tour, which is one of my favorite old Genesis albums, while Peter Gabriel was still in the band. And I think that would have been totally cool to see them in kind of that smaller setting, all right? And just see, Phil Collins on drums, Peter Gabriel, Tony Banks on keyboard, Steve Hackett on guitar, Mike Rutherford on bass, and acoustic guitar. I think that would have been totally cool, something totally different. But honorable mentions, I did pick Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti Tour 1975 at the Garden, February 1st, 1975. They played 19 songs that night, probably 3+ hours. And Chris, they did do a couple 20-minute long songs, so you were not invited to that one. All right. And one of my other I would have loved to have seen, Butch mentioned, seeing Pat Travers, the Pat Travers band in the late 70s, would have loved that. I would have loved to have seen Robin Trower in the mid 70s. I would have loved to have seen Thin Lizzy around that time period. I mean, there's, some of these like classic lineups, classic bands that obviously I was just a little bit too young to see. But even though I've seen both of these bands many, many times, I would have loved to have seen them together. Black Sabbath and Blue Oyster Cult, Black and Blue Tour, MSG, February 1st, 1980. Those just a couple months or about a year before I started going to shows. I would have loved to have been there. I think that would have been completely awesome because, quite frankly, Blue Oyster Cult were probably at their zenith or close to it at that time. And Sabbath, brand new lineup, Heaven and Hell coming out. Yeah, I would have killed to see that. I saw the Mob Rules tour, which was completely awesome, but I think it would have been great to see that first tour with Dio as well. So those are my picks.
Nice.
Pete, I'm a little shocked. You didn't mention Uriah Heep with David Byron back in the early 70s.
I know there's so many of them. I wanted to mention Uriah Heep. I wanted to go see Gentle Giant in the 70s, right? Would have loved to have seen that too. Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of bands I would have loved to see. Those kind of like old lineups and stuff like that.
Yeah, this show would be like 10 hours if we listed
I know, right? Exactly. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I got one point to make on the Black Sabbath Heaven and Hell tour. I got to see that at Lebanon Valley Speedway, and that one was an event because I was a very young kid then, of course, going to shows, and I remember I've been to that Speedway a million times since because I'm a dirt track guy, and I've been to the drag races there too, and the place looks exactly the same as it did in 1980. I remember us pulling up on the place, and the security was like the Hells Angels. Like they were literally along the wall of it. And that night they were taking cars and pushing them into a pit And I still don't understand that to this day. And they had like portable lighting up around it, and people were they were burning cars up, and people were just standing around and throwing rocks. People that were next to me in a car were walking around barefoot, and their feet were bleeding all over because they were walking over broken glass, but they didn't realize why. I remember pulling into that show, and then Black Sabbath actually went on first. And we didn't think they were, and we're like, holy shit! You could hear the, the intro for Sabbath, the and everybody just started running. And I remember people with like a burning cross coming in through the crowd. It was just one of those epic things that. And Lebanon Valley, I don't believe ever had a concert again after that.
No surprise there, right?
Yeah.
I saw a lot of burning crosses in the parking lot of the Brendan Byrne Arena show on the Mob Rules tour. Plenty of that. I remember my friend's father drove us there and dropped us off, and then all of a sudden you see these guys running around with burning crosses and garbage cans on fire, and he looks like, I don't know if I feel too good about leaving you guys here. We're like, don't worry about it. We'll be fine.
The 80s at the Meadowlands Arena could be very violent in the parking lot, as we found out over the years.
It was. All right, Mr. Franco, you're going to finish us off today. What do you got?
Well, the burning crosses thing probably helped me with this segue, because I'm going to kill all of our nice hard rock momentum here with some black metal, because it's me. As everyone knows that knows me, I love Dark Throne and Satyricon, these Norwegian black metal bands. And on August 7, 2004, at the aforementioned Wacken Open Air Festival, Dark Throne did something it never does. It's two guys, and they never play live, and they're one of the most seminal, important bands in the whole black metal world. And the one thing they never do is play live. But on this night, Nocturno Culto, who is one half of that band, and his real name is Ted. You can see why he goes with Nocturno Culto. It's a little more evil. Ted came out on stage with Satyricon and played four songs from classic Dark Throne: Transylvanian Hunger, Under a Funeral Moon, Catharian Life Code, Hordes of Nebula, which to some people probably means nothing, but to me it was pretty amazing. I remember reading about it. It was well within the wheelhouse of me being able to go. I went 2 years prior, and I went to Sweden. Actually, I went to Sweden Rock that year, a couple months before that. So I couldn't afford to go to Europe twice. And man, do I wish I had been out there. Killer Satyricon set. They played a lot of their classic old stuff, and then they did this. He came out, they played Dark Throne, and I mean, it was, there was probably about 40,000 people there, maybe a little more. And then their encore was they played Mother North by Satyricon with Nocturno Culto on guitar. So if you're into black metal, that was like probably one of the most unforgettable things that you could possibly see. And I don't know if it'll ever happen again. My honorable mentions, I have to go with, I know they're a little, this name has become a little synonymous with the news lately. We won't talk about that. But Alive in Athens, one of the finest live shows ever. Iced Earth, of course, that late 90s at the height of their powers. I would have loved to have been in that crowd. And another honorable mention would have been Blind Guardian, Tokyo Tales, which, forgive me, I don't remember what club that was at in Japan, but it was a packed, just an absolute madhouse. And the band, Japanese fans are just almost unequaled in their passion. And I would have loved to have been among them to hear a classic storm through of all of Blind Guardian's classic material. That would have been incredible. I was in high school when that came out, I think. Maybe I don't know, I'm old, not as old as some of you. But
Thanks.
Those are that's my list right there. And like Sydney said, any Operation Mindcrime, any way you slice it from that time, it's one of my favorite albums on earth. I would have loved to have been there. And let me not forget, I brought out the special DVD thing, Devin Townsend. I mentioned it last week. He played in some sort of a Roman open air cathedral type or not cathedral, open air amphitheater in Bulgaria, and he played with an orchestra to the most classic albums that he has made. He played live, and I don't know how the hell I didn't know about that. I should have been at that one too. That was very recent. That was a few years ago. So that's probably, there's others, there's a lot, but that's probably my biggest ones right there.
Steve and Chris
Nice.
both have comments.
I got a question for Slagel. Since NHL's back, Brian, what's your pick for the Stanley Cup this year?
Final's going to be Colorado versus Tampa Bay, with Tampa Bay going back to back.
Wow. with no
Come
people on.
on. They're gonna win it.
I've been on 4 for the last 5 years.
All right.
Really?
Picking the Stanley Cup champion. Yeah.
Wow.
So we'll see.
All I will say is McJesus.
It's going to come down to Colorado's goaltending.
Yeah, that's the one problem. That's why I don't think they're going to win, is because those unless they upgrade at the trade deadline, which that's why it's hard to pick this early on, because these teams change a lot at the trade deadlines, especially this year. But yeah, their goaltending is a little suspect. But it's going to be an interesting season, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know how Tampa Bay is going to do it without Kucherov.
They get enough talent. I mean, that's going to hurt, but they've played well without him before. But they have so much talent on that team. It's going to, one of those guys I think is going to elevate their game quite a bit, like Sorelli or somebody.
I was going to say Sorelli. Yeah.
And they're in the easiest of all those divisions too, so they're going to have a pretty easy season, I have a feeling.
I think Stamkos will play until February, and then he's hurt again.
Probably, if he even plays, who knows?
Yeah, that's not a tough bet. Definitely.
Chris, what was your comment before?
Could say I don't want to burst Nick's bubble, but I was there. I was in the photo pit, for the Satyricon Dark Throne set, and it really wasn't all that great, to be honest.
Really?
The set was great, but Nocturnal Culto just seemed very uneasy, and I just chalked it up to, well, this guy doesn't play live. He hasn't played live in years, and now he's in front of like 50,000 people, and he just kind of seemed he really didn't want to be up here. So,
oh wow! Well, that's something. It's cool you were there, man.
You on using your time machine ticket for another show?
Just trade that in, man.
I'll see. Yeah, I'll see.
Yeah, that one. If you're gonna, I would say if you're gonna see Dark Throne, then just go see Dark Throne in like '93 in like Oslo or something.
Well, I remember Sark. It's his other band, Sark. I don't know how the hell. And they played MDF when it was still outside, and that's Nocturnal Culto's band. And he played one Dark Throne song.
Okay.
Ryan, do you remember what song that was?
No, I you know what? I didn't like that band at all as much as I love Dark Throne. So I watched half their set and walked off and had like 10 parking lot beers. So
Yeah. I remember seeing it.
But
So
I'm like, it was like 8 billion degrees, and I just didn't like their music, so I left.
Yeah, they're all right. They're like black and roll kind of thing.
10 parking lot beers. All right.
Oh yeah,
Am I allowed to have one more question?
Through them with a hurry.
What's that, Steve?
I got one more question for Brian Slagel. What can we expect from Metal Blade in the next couple of months? You got some great releases coming out, or what?
Dread
Yeah, what? It's with all this crazy stuff going on, we're trying to figure out how we're gonna fit all these releases in. So we're still. So the only thing I can say, I don't know if it's been announced yet, but we have a Cannibal Corpse record coming out. I think in April, and then we're kind of, the problem is a lot of these bands want to put out records so they can tour closely afterwards. Since we do not know when touring is going to happen again, we're probably not going to know for a few months. We'll see. I'm hoping that we'll have 3 or 4 pretty big records at the end of the year, the fourth quarter, and then 2022 is going to be stupid. There's going to be it's going to be nuts. Like everybody's going to put out records. So we're going to have to figure out how to put things out when other labels are putting them out, and make sure we're not all stomping all over each other. Same thing with the touring. It's going to be interesting.
Looking forward to Dread Sovereign.
What's that?
Dread Sovereign. I'm looking forward to.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Got that? Yeah, just got that. It was fucking awesome.
I'm waiting for mine still.
The Tribulation is coming out soon too, right, Brian?
Yep. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of real cool stuff coming out. I'm pretty happy with the way all of it sounds. So
cool.
Brian, how was the
definitely
sale?
a lot of good music.
Brian, thanks for keeping it going, man.
My pleasure. I'm just a fan like all you other guys, so it's fun to do it.
Yeah, incredible.
How did the new Fates Warning sell, Brian?
Oh my gosh, I think it's their biggest album of all time.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Like it actually, the Armored Saint did really well.
The
And
Armored
Fates Warning even outdid the Armored Saint. They were like top 30 on the Billboard Top 200, top 10 in Germany. I mean, the numbers were unbelievable. So definitely the highest chart numbers they've had. And I know the first week was almost double what the last one did. So I mean, I love that record, love that band, but I was even surprised at how well it did. So it did phenomenal.
Awesome.
Good news. Good news. So there you have it, everybody. Some Time Machine concerts that we wish we could have attended. So for all of you watching, feel free in the comments below to add in some shows you wish you could have seen, whether, maybe you just missed them for whatever reason, or maybe you were too young, or whatever the reason. Put them in the comments below. We'll be happy to read them and get into some conversation with you. So we want to thank the legendary Brian Slagel for joining us here today. Thank you so much. Good to see you again, my friend. And
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
It was a pleasure. And so for some final thoughts of today, our center square Sydney gets to go again.
Oh God, again?
Again, hey, you have to forget the center square.
Damn, does anybody else want to take this one tonight? I don't. This is a lot.
Whole milk or skim milk? No, I'm just kidding.
Whole milk, because skim milk, I guess, helps you lose weight, but whole milk is better. So thank you for the final thought, Nick. Whole milk. That's what I'm going with.
No. Figure we did.
Oh man, that's the final thought. I don't. That's the final thought. That's it. Whole
That's all
milk.
we get. Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right, everybody. So make sure you visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. Check us out on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube.
All the damn time.
Thank you.
All the damned.
So for Brian Slagel, Lynn Versace, Chris Allo, Butch Jones, Sydney Taylor, Stephen Keeler, Ryan Scow, and Nick Franco, I am Pete Pardo. See you all next Monday night. Take care, everybody.